wives. He satisfied every desire. Was it worth it? It's over. Abu Dhar al-Ghifari lived an altruistic life, a very modest life. Someone says to him, Ya Abu Dhar, why don't you take care of yourself? Comb your hair, wear proper clothes. He said, شغلتني العظيمتان. I've been preoccupied by two things. What are these two things? Al-Jannatu wan-nar. Hellfire and paradise. I can't think of anything else. This life is a very short life. Once we die, الناس نيام. إذا ماتوا انتبهوا. We're asleep. But once we die, we realize that no, there's something else that we needed to think about. The tradition tells us that some people after death, when they sober up and realize the significance of the akhirah and how important it is, they will feel regretful, remorseful for 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, until Judgment Day. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala only knows when Judgment Day will happen. لا يجليها لوقتها إلا هو. So they won't be able to adapt. Now, you're dead, that's it. You have to adapt. You can't. We'll stay regretful until Judgment Day. من أكثر ذكر الموت أحبه الله. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that the kafirin, the unbelievers on the day of judgment, يقسم المجرمون, the criminals, the people that have committed crimes against other people and committed crimes against themselves. يقسم المجرمون ما لبثوا فيها غير ساعة. They will say, Wallah, it was only 1 hour. 70 years will be summarized like, it will be like 1 hour. Because once it's over, it will be like 1 hour. Did you know that a butterfly lives for only 12 hours? Since it's born until it dies, it only takes 12 hours. For us, 12 hours is nothing. But for the butterfly, this is the entire period that they're alive. So it's too much. But for us, it's nothing. 70 years is nothing relative to the coming worlds. Alam al-barzakh and then alam al-qiyamah, the hereafter. That's why ألهاكم التكاثر حتى زرتم المقابر. Go to the graveyard and start to contemplate, start to think. These people that are buried here, they were exactly like me. They had the same set of desires, the same concerns. They had families, they had children, they had parents. They went through sad moments. They had joyful moments too. But no, they're there. A man said once, I saw someone sitting next to a grave while he was wailing and crying bitterly. I said to him, are you crying or grieving at the death of someone related to you? But then he said, I looked at the grave, it was old, it wasn't a recent grave. Who's that? He said, no, I don't even know the guy. But I happened to pass by and I read the inscription on the tombstone. It said that me and you were the same. And in just moments, you'll be called and you'll join us. And this is why I'm crying. حتى زرتم المقابر كلا سوف تعلمون ثم كلا سوف تعلمون. You'll realize, you'll know, you'll understand. But now implement that knowledge. Amir al-Mu'mineen says in one tradition, ما رأيت يقينا أشبه بشك لا يقين فيه مثل الموت أو كالموت. I've never seen a certainty that looks more like a doubt than death. We all are certain that death is there, that death exists, that one day we'll die. But we don't take it seriously. Traditions tell us that if a person goes to a graveyard, the dead souls will talk to that person, will try to convey a message, but alas, that we won't hear that message. They will say, Ya ghafil, O heedless, لو علمت ما علمنا لذهب لحمك على عقلك. If you come to know what we went through, if you come to see the experience of death, your flesh will melt on your bones. لذهب لحمك على جلدك. Unfortunately, everyone is asleep. Very few people are aware of what will happen, what will take place. Brothers and sisters, because we'll be going through several stages before death, during death, and after death, we at least got to know what we'll be going through. The first stage is ihtibar. Ihtibar are the moments that will come before the actual separation of the soul from the body. And this is a very critical moment for mankind. Why? Because we will be weak mentally and physically. And the shaitan will try to take the opportunity and exploit that moment to take our faith from us. And these last moments are very important. It's like the final exam. If you fail in that final exam, that's it. This is the su'u al-aqibah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, ثُمَّ كَانَ عَاقِبَةَ الَّذِينَ أَسَاءُوا السُّوءَ أَنْ كَذَّبُوا بِآيَاتِ اللَّهِ وَكَانُوا بِهَا يَسْتَهْزِئُونَ. These last moments are very critical. And of course, it all depends on how we did during and throughout our lifetime. For example, if you've accumulated lots of sins throughout your life, these sins will weigh in if you didn't repent. These sins will weigh in at this very last moment and will change the outcome, will change your fate. The tradition says, Imam Sadiq alayhi salam, Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. الشيطان يأتي إلى ولي من أوليائنا. Shaitan will come and hover over the head of every human being. Will sit on the right side, and then will come and sit on the left side, and will come face to face with that person dying. Just like a kid wants a lollipop from the dad or from the mom, sit on the right side and start to beg. But Shaitan will try to deceive that person to take away his or her faith. If that person is a mu'min, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect that person. يثبت الله الذين آمنوا بالقول الثابت في الحياة الدنيا. The grounds will not be shaky. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect that person. But if that person's faith is shaky, Shaitan will be able to take away the faith. Deceive that person at that very last moment. There was a businessman in Kuwait. Upon his death, he went through the near-death experience. He didn't actually die. Later on, he recovered. During his death time, he was surrounded by his children. They knew that he was going to die. So they tried to make him say the Shahadatain, the testimony. But he refused. He said, no, I'm not saying it. Come on, say it. We know you're going to die. You know you're going to die. He said, no. He refused to say it. They insisted with him. Later on, he recovered. He asked him, what happened? Why didn't you say it? This was a very critical moment. You used to say the Shahadatain all the time. When you do the salah, when you pray. He said, because I saw someone. Something. Tradition tells that this is Shaitan. He went to the drawer where I put all the important documents, my shares, the documents that state how much I owe people and how much people owe me. And these documents were important for me. He went to the drawer and he showed me the papers. He said, if you say the Shahadatain, I will tear these papers up. I couldn't say it because of the attachment that I had to these things. Brothers and sisters, the painful experience of death depends on how attached you are to the worldly desires. For some people, it's an easy experience. For some people, it's excruciating. How? It's like a small plant. If it's a small plant that doesn't have deep roots inside the soil, you can pluck it with one hand. Sometimes it's a shrub that you need to use two hands. Sometimes it's a palm tree that you need to use a crane with chains to pull it out. It will be a very difficult experience. So he said it was for this reason. When he recovered, he went and tore the papers up. He said, I don't want these papers to change my fate when I die. I don't want these papers. Let's get rid of them. Another man who was in the holy city of Najd, he was a teacher. The same thing happened to him. He went through the near-death experience, but he didn't die. Again, during these critical moments, he was asked to say the testimony. He was able to speak. Say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
But he refused to say the testimony again. Shaykhana, say it. No, I'm not going to say it. No way I'm saying it. But then when he recovered later on, his students stopped attending his lessons. He happened to come across one of his students one day in the alleys of Najd. So he said to one of them, I'm not asking you to attend my lessons again. I just want to know, why did you stop attending my lessons? So the guy said, to be honest with you, because of what we saw or witnessed last moments, you thought you were going to die. We thought you were going to die, but you refused to say the Shahadatain. Recite aloud, salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Why didn't you say the testimony, Shaykh? He said, now that you mentioned it, I'm going to be honest with you too. I saw someone who came to me and he said, if you say the testimony, I will kill your child. I will kill your son. I only have one son. And it was very hard for me. So saying the testimony tantamounts to taking the life of my son, I couldn't say it. I simply couldn't say it. It was very hard for me. And now I asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to take the life of my son during my lifetime. Because this is a very hard test for me. This is something difficult that I can't, a test that I cannot pass. I'll definitely fail in that test. So the first thing is the ihtirar. Then comes the actual moment of death. And this is very difficult. This is very hard. Hadith says, وَصَّةٌ مِّن وَصَصِ الْمَوْتِ. Sorry, tradition says that نَشْرٌ بِالْمَنَاشِيرِ وَقَرْضٌ بِالْمَقَارِيرِ أَهْوَنُ مِنْ وَصَّةٍ مِّن وَصَصِ الْمَوْتِ. Traditions tell us that the soul is extracted from the legs, and then it reaches the throat. The person dying will start to choke. Every time he chokes, this is more painful than being severed with a saw and his body being chopped off by the saw. أَهْوَنُ مِنْ وَصَّةٍ مِّن وَصَصِ الْمَوْتِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in one verse, كُلُّ نَفْسٍ ذَائِقَةُ الْمَوْتِ. Every soul will taste death. How come? Do we get to taste death? Does it have a taste? Is it bitter, sweet? A tradition says that Jesus, Prophet Isa ala nabiyina wa alayhi salam, he brought back the successor of Nuh by the name of Sam. He brought him back to life. So he asked him about the hereafter, about the akhirah. One of the miracles of Jesus, bringing people back to life. So when he brought him back to life, he said to him, do you want to stay or you want to go back to where he came from the hereafter? He said, no, I want to go back. Why? I don't want to experience death again. Why not? He said, لا زالت مرارة الموت تعترض حلقي. Nuh was the 5th generation after Adam alayhi salam. Between Nuh and Isa is at least a couple of thousand years. He said, I can still feel the bitterness of death in my throat after thousands of years. So I don't want to experience death again. Traditions tell us that when Imam al-Hujjah Allah Ta'ala
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
May Allah hasten his reappearance. When he reappears, the mu'mineen will be given the choice of coming back to this life. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaks about the raj'ah in numerous verses in the Quran. Some people are given the choice to come back to this life or stay in paradise. So an angel will call the mu'mineen and tells them, if you want to come back to life, because Imam al-Hujjah has reappeared. Most of them will say, yeah, this is the time we're waiting for, this is the moment we've always wanted to see. So all of them will decide to come back to life. And then the people that had a bad experience with death, the mu'mineen, will say that, do we get to experience death again? They say, yes, you have to die again. They'll tell the other mu'mineen, okay, goodbye, we're not coming. We're staying here, we're not coming, because of the experience of death. And then, after death, traditions tell us that the angels will accompany the corpse, the body. If that person is a mu'min, they will ask for forgiveness for the mu'min. If that person is an unbeliever or a fasiq, the angels will curse that person. Traditions tell us that don't rapidly and abruptly take the body to the graveyard and bury it straight away. Do it gradually, because that person is in a state of fear. He's moving to a new unpleasant place. إلى قبر لم أمهده لرقدة, Imam Zain al-Abidin says, to a place that I haven't prepared for. Somewhere scary. That's why do it gradually. At first, put it like 3 meters away from the grave. Then carry it again. Put it 2 meters, as close as 2 meters, and then do it as close as 1 meter, and then bury that person, so that it will be something gradual and not as hard. And then comes the burial. Do we get to choose where we're buried? Not exactly, for 2 reasons. One, ما تدري نفس ماذا تكسب غدا وما تدري نفس بأي أرض. We don't know when and where we'll die. A lot of people that were raised, born in another country, and then they migrate to another country, they die there, and they are buried there. Most of the time, it's the family that gets to choose where their family member is buried. I remember a couple of years ago in New York, I went to a graveyard. One of the brothers over there told me that he showed me a grave. He said, this grave belongs to my uncle. He came from Tanzania. He wanted to go to Canada to see his family. He transited in New York. It was only a 2-day transit. He died there. He was buried there. So first of all, because we don't know when our death time approaches and departure time approaches, so therefore we won't be able to make the decision of where we're buried. But this is part of the reality. The real reality is that the Prophet says, يُدْفَنُ الْمَرْءُ فِي الْمَوْضَعِ الَّذِي أُخِذَتْ مِنْهُ طِينَتُهُ. Will be buried in the same place our clay, the origin of our existence, was taken from. So I told that brother in New York, I said, your grandfather deserves the American citizenship because he's a real American. The clay of his existence was taken from this soil. يُدْفَنُ الْمَرْءُ فِي الْمَوْضَعِ الَّذِي أُخِذَتْ مِنْهُ طِينَتُهُ. That's mesmerizing. Why? Because we know Adam was created from clay. خَلَقْتَنِي مِنْ نَارٍ وَخَلَقْتَهُ مِنْ طِينٍ. Shaitan says, you created me from fire and created him from clay. أَسْجُدُ لِمَنْ خَلَقْتَ طِينًا in Surah Al-Isra. Shaitan says, should I prostrate before someone you created from clay? But what about us? We are the lineage of Adam, but were we created from clay? Each and every one of us? Yes, هُوَ الَّذِي خَلَقَكُم مِّن طِينٍ ثُمَّ قَضَى أَجَلًا وَأَجَلٌ مُّسَمًّى. He created you, every one of us, from clay. Each and every one of us. Traditions say that when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wanted to create Adam, He sent Archangel Gabriel to go and collect clay from various parts of the world. Not from one place. Why? Because He wanted different races to descend from Adam. You've got the black people. You've got the Caucasian. You've got the white people. You've got the Asians. You've got, different people that all are the children of Adam alayhi salam. Because of the different parts of the world that dirt was collected from and then mixed with water, and then the clay. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends Archangel Gabriel to fetch the clay. As he is about to do this, when the earth says, أُعِيذُكَ بِاللَّهِ, I seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, don't take anything from me. Because a creature will be created from me that will sin, that will commit sins, and I don't want that to happen. I don't want a part of me to sin, to commit sins. So Jibreel goes back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends Mikael, another angel. The same thing happens. Then the angel comes back. Then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sends the angel of death. It wasn't the angel of death back then. He sends him to take the clay. So the earth talks to Azrael, saying that, A'udhu billah, I seek refuge in Allah, don't take from me. He said, I seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala who ordered me to take the clay. Then he takes the clay. When he takes the clay, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to him that you deserve to be the angel of death. So you implement the orders as told. The Prophet of Islam says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has over 70,000 angels. Their sole duty is to carry the corpses, the bodies of people, and put them where they belong. Where their clay, the origin, the essence of their existence was made from. 70,000 angels, this is their duty. These are traditions. Do we have any proof from the Quran? Yes. مِنْهَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ وَإِلَيْهَا نُعِيدُكُمْ. You will return to the same place you were created from. مِنْهَا خَلَقْنَاكُمْ وَإِلَيْهَا نُعِيدُكُمْ. During the time of Umar, Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam enters inside the assembly of Umar and hears that there is a commotion. What's wrong? A slave killed his master. And he was sentenced to death. So Imam Ali says, did you kill your master? He said, yes. Why? Because he wanted to sexually assault me. So the Imam said, wait. Go dig the grave of his master. He went, dug the grave of the master, but they couldn't find the corpse. They couldn't find the body. So the Imam said, Sadaq. This man is truthful. What he's saying is true. سمعت حبيبي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. That whomever carries out the act of the Sodomites, the nation of Lut, Allah will raise him with the nation of Lut, with the Sodomites. Whoever carry out sodomy, he will be raised with the Sodomites. He's not there. Maytham al-Tammar comes to the Imam alayhi salam. He says to him, my mother died, passed away. He give me permission to take her to the city of Medina. Imam Ali alayhi salam says to her that if your mother was a good lady, the angels will do that. You don't have to do it. You don't have to do it. ينقلون أبرار المؤمنين, the faithful ones, to the holy city of Mecca in the mosque of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Masjid al-Haram, and in the holy city of Medina near the Prophet. That's why we've got traditions that indicate that between the one corner of the Kaaba where the black stone is and Maqam Ibrahim, there are over 70 prophets buried in that location. 70 prophets. Now, did they die there? Were they buried there? Or that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala later on moved their bodies to that location? Or another tradition says that in the holy city of Karbala, there are over 600 prophets and successors. They lived there, or they were carried to the holy city of Karbala. And this story happened as recent as 30 years ago. A man who wasn't really, his beliefs weren't proper beliefs. I know the man. He died in the holy city of Kalamiyya in Baghdad. And he was buried in one of the rooms in the courtyard of the Imam of the Ja'far's shrine. He was buried there. I heard the story with only one medium. The man who heard from the gravedigger told me. He said that they buried the man inside one of the rooms. And then later on, the gravedigger realized that he lost his identification card. And the identification card, especially back then, was like your citizenship. And if you lose it for good. You lose it for good in Iraq. You lose your citizenship. So, but then when he thinks about it, he realizes that it fell inside the grave while he was burying that man. So he goes to the son of that man. He says to him, look, apparently my citizenship fell in the grave while I was burying your father. So the son says, okay, after midnight, dig the grave again and take your citizenship. So he says that I went with another person having a lantern in one hand. He started to dig the grave. And then when I reached to the bottom of the grave, I found my citizenship, but the body wasn't there. I couldn't believe my eyes. I told the guy standing at the brink of the grave, can you help me out? There's something happening. What? Look inside. There's nothing inside. Only the citizenship was there. Only the citizenship. Why? Because traditions tell us that the holy sites of the holy imams are part of paradise. إِنَّ قُبُورَنَا تُرْعَ مِنْ تُرَعِ الْجَنَّةِ. You've heard the hadith that says مَا بَيْنَ قَبْرِي وَرَوْضَتِي مِنْ مَا بَيْنَ قَبْرِي وَمِنْبَرِي رَوْضَةٌ مِنْ رِيَاضِ الْجَنَّةِ. It's part of paradise. So if someone doesn't belong there, doesn't deserve to be next to the ma'soom, he'll be taken away. He'll be taken away. Not allowed to stay here. يُدْفَنُ الْمَرْءُ فِي الْمَوْضَعِ الَّذِي أُخِذَتْ مِنْهُ طِينَةٌ. Now, after burial, we've got two kinds of graves. We've got the literal grave, where the body goes in, and we've got the grave of the soul, which is the barzakh. And most of the traditions, speak about the grave after death, these traditions are referring to the grave of the barzakh, where the soul is kept. Of course, there is an attachment between the two. That's why when you go to a grave of someone related to you, first of all, they become happy. It's like visiting them during their lifetime. You recite Fatiha on their grave, it will reach them. So there is an attachment, but the grave is kept somewhere else. Now the body goes inside the grave. What happens to the body? I think we're all interested in what happens to the body, because we take so much care of our body. The cream that we use, the makeup that the women wear. We stand in front of the mirror every day, a couple of minutes. For the woman, it's a couple of hours sometimes. Admiring the beauty, the eyes look nice, the nose looks nice, the mouth looks nice. But what will happen to this body that I take so much care of? What will happen to my hands? What will happen to me? At first, when we die, patches of discoloring will appear on the body. And then the body will start to swell. Will start to swell, and then the decay will begin. The body will decay because the cells won't be able to fight the bacteria. And you can visit a site. The main name is deathonline.net. If you're 18 years or over, go check that site. It's disgusting what happens to the body, but it's something that we need to know. We need to know what will happen to the body when it goes there, and then the decomposition will begin. And in certain incidents, in crime investigations, when they find, for example, a body in the forest, if they want to know when the person died, they check the kind of worm that is feeding on the body. For example, after 10 days, thick, ugly, white worm will start to feed on the body. Hadith says, someone comes to Imam Sadiq and says, does the decomposition apply to the mu'mineen and the unbelievers? He said, there are exceptions. For example, if someone performs ghusl al-Jum'ah, the ghusl, on Fridays, then they'll be exempt from this general rule. But generally, all the mu'mineen, even their bones will decay and decompose. The mu'mineen and the kafirin. This is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's general rule. It will be applied to everyone. What about the soul? What will happen to the soul? Even the closest person to you will only remain a couple of years. Will stay alone, and these are the most excruciating moments that we'll go through. أشد ساعة على الميت. First night, and that's why we have Salat al-Wahsh. Pray Salat al-Wahsh and give it as a gift to that dead person. It will ease these hours, because it's his first hours. Traditions tell us that the first thing that will happen, the earth will talk to that person. Isn't it superstitious to believe that the earth can talk? According to the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, قُلْنَا لَهَا وَلِلْأَرْضِ ائْتِيَا طَوْعًا أَوْ كَرْهًا. We spoke to the sky and to the earth. Come either willingly or otherwise. They have free will. They will say to that person, if he's a mu'min, his or her, if he's a mu'min, the earth will say that, how much did I enjoy you walking on me, being an obedient servant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now I will reward you. The grave will be expanded. If that person is a kafir, then the earth will say, how much did I hate you walking on my surface? Being a disobedient servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, how much did you sin? Now you'll see. And then there's the pressure of the earth. ضغطة القبر. Imam Sadiq alayhi salam says, I see I seek refuge in Allah from the pressure of the grave. Very few people will be spared from it. Most people will experience it. When Rasulullah buried his daughter Ruqayyah in the Baqiyah, then he said, Ya Allah, astawhibuka Ruqayyah. I ask you to spare her from the pressure of the grave. Because a lot of things that we'll do, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants to purify us. If we want to go to paradise, especially the mu'mineen with sins, if they want to be purified, They're either purified in this life by going through tribulations and trials and hardships and difficulties. If they're not purified completely, then the death moment is hard for them. If they're not purified completely, then the pressure of the grave will purify them, will cleanse them from the sins. Hadith says about Sa'd ibn Mu'adh, who was a companion of the Prophet. He was actually, he died because of the wounds in one of the battles of the Prophet. So he was a martyr. The Prophet took part in the funeral procession. He was barefooted, and he walked to the right side of the casket and to the left side of the casket. When he was asked, why are you doing this? He said, because my hand was in the hand of Jibreel with 70,000 angels, and then the Prophet himself lowered him in the grave. And then when he was buried, his mother said, Hani'an laka al-jannah ya Sa'd. Congratulations, you went to paradise. So the Prophet said to her, La tuhattimi ala Allah al-jannah. Don't be certain that he's in paradise now. Inna al-qabr asarahu wa asrah. Now the earth, the grave, pressed him in a way that the milk you fed him oozed out of his fingertips. يحصره عصره ينسى لذات الدنيا جميعها. One tradition says that this pressure will make him forget about all the desires he satisfied in this life. 1 second and he forgets about all of them. A friend of mine was diagnosed with lung cancer. He recovered, alhamdulillah, and he's still alive. He said that every time I climb, he was a chain smoker. Every time I climb the stairs, every breath that I take, I regret every puff that I took from the cigarettes. Every puff. So this is what will happen with regards to the pressure of the grave. Of course, we've got two sorts of pressures. We've got physical pressure, and we've got spiritual pressure. Apparently, the traditions are referring to the spiritual one. How? For example, if you're indebted and you should give the loan tomorrow and you don't have the money, you'll be under immense pressure. We won't be able to see that pressure, but you're under immense pressure. And this will affect your health, affect your heart, affect your health generally. Or if a person is seeing a nightmare, he's going through a lot. This is different from the physical pressure, but this is also a pressure. Apparently, the traditions are referring to the spiritual pressure, but it also affects the body. So, how, I don't know, but it will affect the body. And then traditions tell us that the soul will be brought back to the belly and not the feet. And then one angel will come to document the things that we've done during our lifetime. It's not the interrogation session. It's only to document the things that we did during our lifetime. So the angel will say, you have to write down everything that you did. That person might say, I don't remember what I ate last night. How can I remember what I did? Everything. What are the things that will be held accountable for? لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وإن تبدوا ما في أنفسكم أو تخفوه يحاسبكم به الله. Even the things you concealed in your mind, you'll be held accountable for. Why? Because these thoughts will be translated into words, and these words will be translated into actions. Every action that we carry out, what preceded the action was actually the thoughts of it. That's why even the thoughts that we conceal in our minds, these will be documented. You'll be given a pen and a paper to write down everything that you did. The first thing that we'll say to the angel is that, I don't remember anything. The angel will say, I forgot about it, but we remember everything that you did. And then the angel will start to tell us, to dictate the things that we have to write down. And then we'll write down the good deeds that we're performing. We'll write it down comfortably until we reach to the bad things. We'll feel embarrassed. This is an experience that we have to go through in the akhirah. We have to exercise ourselves in this life. We have a hadith that says on the day of Arafah, it is recommended that you remember every sin that you committed. Recall all the sins that you committed and try to mention them on your tongue. You'll feel disgraced. But the angel will say to that person, You didn't feel ashamed when you actually committed the sin. Now you feel ashamed to write it down. Write it down, write it down. So we'll write down everything. From the moment we became baligh until the moment of our death. Everything will be written down. And then the book will be sealed down and will be attached to our neck. وكل إنسان ألزمناه طائره في عنقه ونخرج له يوم القيامة كتابا يلقاه منشورا. This is the book that will open on the day of judgment. And then this angel will leave. Two angels will come. They're either Nakir or Munkar or Bashir or Bushar. These are two angels that will come in different forms. If that person is a good person, then they will be called Bashir and Mubashir. They will bring glad tidings to that person. If that person, the deceased, is a bad person, they will look dreadful, scary. So the first things that they will ask is that, what are your beliefs? The foundations of your beliefs. Who is your Lord? If that person is a mu'min, he will say Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then they'll say Sadaq. These are not questions that we can think of after we die. These are the reflections. These will be the reflections of how we lived. For example, you pray every day and say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. You're actually giving a testimony that there is no God but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when are you required to give a testimony in court? You've actually witnessed the incident. When you say that I bear witness that there is no God but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, this is the answer that you'll be giving when they ask you who is your Lord. You say Allah, they'll say Sadaq. And then, what's your religion? The religion of Islam. لا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. The religion of Islam. What's your book? Holy Quran. Sadaq. Who's your prophet? Muhammad. If someone doesn't know the answer, that person will say, يقولون, I don't know myself, but they say it's Allah. They'll say, Kadib, you're lying. You don't know who your Lord is, you have to be punished for that. What's your book? Who's your prophet? That person won't know the answer, and he'll be punished. But then the last question, amongst the set of beliefs, is who's your Imam? Who's your Imam? Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, إِنَّمَا أَنْتَ مُنذِرٌ. He says to the Prophet, you are a warner. وَلِكُلِّ قَوْمٍ هَادٍ. Every nation should have a guide. And Sahih al-Bukhari says, مَنْ مَاتَ وَلَمْ يَعْرِفْ إِمَامَ زَمَانِهِ مَاتَ مِيتَةً جَاهِلِيَّةً. Whoever dies not knowing who his Imam is, who is the representative of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. Because Allah says in the Holy Quran, إِنِّي جَاعِلٌ فِي الْأَرْضِ خَلِيفَةً. I will appoint a representative on earth. The first appointee, the first representative was Adam. But who now is the representative of Allah? لا تخلو الأرض من حجة. There is no time that there is no proof of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala walking on the face of earth. You should know who your Imam is. مَاتَ مِيتَةً جَاهِلِيَّةً. Whoever doesn't know his Imam, he will die a death of the pagan era. مَاتَ مِيتَةً جَاهِلِيَّةً. One day a man comes to see Imam Ar-Rida alayhi salam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Imam says to his companion, says to him, he mentions a name, he said this person died and he went to hell. I was frightened because that person believed in Imam Ali, believed in all the Imams, but he was one of the pivots of the Waqifiyya. He didn't believe in the Imamat of Imam Ar-Rida alayhi salam. So the Imam says to him that he went to hell, straight to hell. Man was frightened. Why? He said because the angels asked him about his Imam. They asked him about his Lord, he knew. They asked him about who the Prophet is, he knew. They asked him who your Imam is. He said, I don't know of any Imam after Musa bin Ja'far. So they lashed him with a whip. His grave was filled with fire until the day of judgment. And after these questions about our beliefs, they'll be asking two main questions. And how would you spend your life? How did you spend your life? The second question is, how did you earn a living? How did you accumulate your money? And how did you spend your money? Now, how do we get prepared? Just two advice. One is that حاسبوا قبل أن تحاسبوا وموتوا قبل أن تموتوا. Judge yourself before you're judged, And consider yourself dead before you actually die. Every night, before you go to sleep, take a tasbih and start to count the sins that you've committed since you woke up till you went to sleep. After 40 days, inshallah, you'll reach the stage where you haven't committed any sin. It's always important to think about the things that we've done, especially for the youth. You might, for example, shout at your mother and not realize that this was a bad thing that you've done. But now, when you want to go to sleep, think about it. Was it bad? Was it good? So count the sins that you've committed. Then, inshallah, after 40 days, you reach the stage where you haven't committed any sins. Then try to do everything قربة إلى الله تعالى, in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. موتوا قبل أن تموتوا. And don't rely on anyone. I saw someone lying on his deathbed. He died later on. He was concerned. He was worried. He was telling his sons, look, I want you to take my corpse to the holy city of Najaf. I want you to pray on behalf of me at least 5 years. I want you to fast on behalf of me. I missed out on some obligations. I want you to do all of that on behalf of me. Hadith says that one day, a group of people come to Imam Ali saying that someone died, he's our relative, and now we want to bury him, but we haven't done so. We haven't done that. We're just waiting for you to pray on him. Imam Ali realized that they want the imam to pray on him so that he'll be exempt from the adab, from the punishment. So the imam said, okay, I'll pray. His deeds and actions will pray on him. Don't expect me to take all his sins, like the things that the Christians say about Jesus. That's not going to happen. Yes, the shafa'ah, the intercession on the day of judgment. The death, the grave, barzakh, no. Help yourself. Imam Sadiq says this. Help yourself. So what we should do is that we shouldn't rely on anyone. Because if you didn't think about yourself during your lifetime, don't think your children will take care of you. Don't think your children will think more about you now that you're dead. Because you didn't think about your own future, yourself. So don't rely on your children. Abu Dhar, when his son died, he began to cry. But then he said, son, I'm not crying, grieving at your death. Because this stems out of self-love. I'm crying because of the loss that was incurred on me. I'm crying for what you're going through. It's so strenuous. It's so hard. It's so difficult that even Imam Hassan al-Mushtaba would cry. Why are you crying?
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
He cries. You are the grandson of the Prophet. You are the master, the youth of paradise. And even Lady Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
In her last will to the Imam alayhi salam, Amir al-Mu'mineen, she says, Aba al-Hasan ma ahibtani kha'inah. I've never betrayed you, O Imam Ali. ولا خالفتك منذ عاشرتني. I've never acted against your will during my lifetime. ولا خالفتك منذ عاشرتني أبا الحسن إذا أنا مت فادفني بالليل. If I die, bury me at night. وغسلني بالليل, and wash my body at night. وكفني بالليل, and shroud me at night. ولا تشهد أحدا ممن ظلمني جنازتي, and don't allow the people that oppressed me to take part in my funeral procession. إذا هدأت العيون ونامت الأبصار أبا الحسن وتزوج من بعدي ابنة أختي أمامة, get married to my niece Umama after my death. واجعل لها يوما وليلة ولولدي الحسن والحسين يوما وليلة, and take care of my sons Hassan and Hussein. ولا تصح في وجههما فإنهما يصبحان من بعدي يتيمين باكين, because they will become orphans after my death. بالأمس فقدا جدهما واليوم يفقدان أمهما. A few days ago their grandfather died, and now their mother is dying. أبا الحسن وتعهد قبري بقراءة القرآن. I want you to come every night and give me comfort by reciting Quran on my grave, because it will be hard for me to be separated from you, from my children. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam executed her will. When he was washing her at night, he had the lantern in one hand. Asma says that Imam Amir al-Mu'mineen was crying quietly. He didn't want the people to wake up. But then suddenly he leaned on the wall and began to cry loudly. What makes you cry, O Aba al-Hasan, O father of Hassan? Why are you crying like this? Is it because of the memories? Did you remember Fatima? Did you remember Rasulullah? He said, no, Asma, it's not because of the memories. But as I was washing her, I found that there is a rib that is broken, and she never told me about it. What's painful is not the actual rib. What's painful is because Fatima didn't tell me about this broken rib. But I say, oh Amir al-Mu'mineen, you cry when you see your wife has a broken rib. What did they do to your son Hussein on the day of Ashura, when he was lying on the sand dunes of Karbala? Lady Zainab rushed toward the battlefield, but she couldn't recognize her brother's body. She said, Ya ibna ummi, anta akhi, anta ibn walidi. Are you the son of my father Ali? Are you the son of my mother Fatima? بحق أمي عليك إلا ما كلمتني، فظهري من ثقل المصيبة راكعون. Oh Hussein, if it wasn't for the strangers, if it wasn't for the enemies, I'd show you what they did to my back. I would show you what they did to me, oh Hussein. وظهري من ثقل المصيبة راكعون، ومتني من ضرب السياط معايا. لكنما المرجع لله، ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. اللهم إن لم تكن قد غفرت لنا فيما مضى من شهر رمضان، فاغفر لنا فيما بقي منك. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to hasten in the reappearance of Imam al-Zaman, Ajjal Allah farajahu al-Sharif, and to forgive us and to shower us with His mercy. وإلى أرواح أموات المؤمنين والمؤمنات. We'll recite Surah Al-Fatiha after allowed salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Let him stay.
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
The question and answer session now. Those people who want to pose questions to Sayyid Mustafa, they can do so, and we also should pose questions to Maulana Zulkifli Sahib, who can also do so. before we do that, usual announcement of Ramadan Fund. I think today, it's more important because you've heard what Maulana has said. The things which are most beneficial to you, most dear to you, which is your wealth. I'm giving you an opportunity to start parting with that. Ramadan Fund is open, £200 per family. Start doing it from now, so that when you sort of proceed to your last moments, it's easier to forego that. So please, a lot of you have donated. Thank you very much for that. But there is still some of you who have donated. Please do so, because that £200 will be very benefit to the Jamaat. So what?
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Also the gift that we want to present to the Babul Murad Center. We've only got a few more days, and I want that gift to go to Allah now when he needs us. So please, donate generously for that as well. Now we'll take questions. Ladies, if they can send notes across, and I'll open the floor now. Any questions? Please. Can you please come to the mic so the ladies can benefit from the questions as well?
Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Thank you very much, young brother. Very good. Actually, you gave the speech. Actually, everybody needs that to remind and go back what we are, where we're going, and what we require there. There are certain questions because being an aged person, I learned a lot about Islam. For many points you have mentioned, there are certain things to be clear about, if you don't mind. First thing is, if the body is there to be one where they belong to, it has to be taken by Allah Ta'ala, certain action. Where they bury the body could not stay there. It could go further anywhere else because of. What about that our beliefs are that Abu Bakr and Umar are buried by the side of Prophet? Are they still there, or by their bad deeds? They must have been removed again, right? Number one. Number two, you mentioned about the daughter of Rasul Kareem Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, Hazrat Ruqayya. Did you mean that she is the real daughter of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, or just being called daughter because Mawla Ali alayhi salatu wasalam also raised Muhammad al-Bakr, and Hazrat Ali alayhi salatu wasalam mentioned him as his son. I think I've got about 4 different questions, but I think 2 will be enough. So if you can give the answer, then if I got your answer, I'll give you some more questions.
Could you just repeat the question briefly so those ladies who haven't heard will be able to...
Because this mic is not...
Okay, with regards to the first question, which was about whether or not Umar and Abu Bakr, the first and the second Caliph, are they still buried beside the Prophet or they were taken somewhere else? With regards to the soul, we've got a tradition that the souls of the mu'minin will be taken to Wadi Salam, and the souls of the unbelievers will be taken to Wadi Barahut in Yemen. But with regards to the bodies, I think we've got traditions that say Salman and Abu Dhar are now buried to the next to the Prophet, because Salman was told by the Prophet that you are one of us, Ahlul Bayt. So according to traditions, Salman maybe was closer to the Prophet than maybe Umar and Abu Bakr. So the Imam Sadiq, when he went to Medina, he visited Abu Dhar and he visited Salman, although Salman was originally buried in Madain in Iraq, and Abu Dhar was buried in Rabada. But then traditions tell us that maybe their bodies were brought to Medina. With regards to the Ruqayya, there were the two wives of Uthman, Ruqayya and Zainab. We've got traditions that say that they were the daughters of the Prophet. Some say that they were the daughters of Hala, the sister of Khadija. Some people say that they were the daughters of Khadija, not from the Prophet, from her former husband. But there are traditions that say no, they're actually the daughters of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and that doesn't mean that Lady Fatima's status will be degraded. What's so special about Lady Fatima is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala chose for her. She was chosen from Alam al-Dhar. Before that, just like Imam Ali, he had brothers too. This doesn't mean that his brothers, like Aqil, will be like him only because he's the son of Abi Talib alayhi salam. So there are traditions that state they were the daughters of the Prophet, but this is something that needs to be discussed within a scholarly context, because we've got traditions that say historical accounts and reports and also traditions.
Thank you very much.
Are there any other questions? Yeah. There's a question from the ladies. Other than doing Friday ghusl, are there any other acts we can do to prevent the great squeezing?
I'm not sure now, but we have a tradition that Friday also will prevent decomposition taking place, and maybe we have a tradition that says Salatul Layl will also have a similar effect, but I'm not sure of that.
Okay, so anyone who wants to get further clarifications here can do that after the session. Are there any other questions? Can you come to the mic?
No, I'll repeat the question.
Oh, okay, yeah.
First of all, say thank you for an enlightening and sobering talk. I've heard from some previous lectures that for every soul, Allah predetermines certain qualities, certain talents, and certain potential limits for that soul, spiritually speaking. But yet, we also have the concept of free will and the fact that humans can be worse than animals or higher than angels because of the choices that they make in life. So my question is, in your opinion, where does the line lie? I mean, that's not so straightforward, I know, but if Allah predetermines certain qualities and your potential, are you able to outdo that potential in life, or are you able to can you rise above your station? Can you, also the other way as well?
Well, that's a deep philosophical question, but first of all, the question is with regards to predestination. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala predestines certain qualities for certain souls, as opposed to other people that are seemingly let down because they don't have these qualities. So is that fair? Is that just to do that?
Are these things predetermined in a way? But because you have to
Yes,
justice as God on one hand, who wouldn't punish you for things that were not your own will. So how do you reconcile these?
Well, first of all, we've got traditions that say if you possess a certain value, a certain quality, for example, you're brave, or that you're generous. There are people that are stingy by nature. So it's very hard for these people to give anything in the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as opposed to people that are generous. They don't feel this attachment. They were born like this, or the atmosphere, the way they were raised. Traditions say that if you possess certain qualities, you have to be thankful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But this doesn't mean that the people that don't possess this quality cannot gain and attain this quality. In fact, this is a double-edged sword, because if you're a brave person that don't invest in your courageousness and don't utilize bravery in for example, in the fields required, for example, take a bold step to practice your religion, then what you're doing is you're not being thankful enough, and you're suppressing this quality, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will punish you even more. But the person that didn't have it in the first place, no, you'll have to acquire it, you'll have to achieve it, but you won't be suppressing it. It's like Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, some people are born blind, some people have the ability to see. The people that have the ability to see, it's true, this is a bounty from Allah, this is a gift from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but you have to utilize it in the right path. If you don't, then what you're doing is much worse than a person who was blind and he didn't, because he was simply blind, he couldn't do the good things that you were able to do. But are we able to outdo our, be able to alleviate ourselves or to extricate ourselves from our potential to become better? Yes. We've got traditions that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the bada. Bada is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can change things. Even people that were scholars, we have two concepts in Islam, the concept of khidlan and the concept of tawfiq. Tawfiq is when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala lets a person down. How? Because you're not sincere. You were raised in a religious, for example, environment. You're not sincere. Deep down, you want to take every opportunity to sin. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help you commit the sin. How? For example, will make your parents travel, or you go to uni with a very contaminated atmosphere. You'll start to commit sins then. You'll open the doorways for you to commit more sins because you're not sincere and you wanted that. As opposed to tawfiq, which means you're raised, for example, in a contaminated environment. Your parents are always pressuring you not to become religious, but because deep down you're sincere, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will extricate you out of that atmosphere and help you to become more religious in life. So there's always this bada, there's the chance to always progress in life. For example, we have a tradition that says if you recite 1,000 Surah Al-Qadr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will change your fate, will change the destiny. It was destined for you to, for example, be on a certain level, but then you read Surah Al-Anzalna, Allah chooses something better for you. So there's always room for progress and to be better.
Thank you. Thanks. Please go ahead.
My question is regarding iftar. We do Maghrib and then is there a time limit that how much delay should we do before we do iftar?
No, as soon as the adhan is recited, you can eat iftar.
Okay. And if you delay it, is there a problem?
Delay the iftar or delay the prayers?
Delay the iftar.
No, there's no problem.
Okay.
Before it was like this. Before there was a certain period of time where you had to eat iftar during the Prophet's time. If you didn't eat in that time, you couldn't break your fast. And tradition tells that there was one of the companions of the Prophet who didn't eat for 3 consecutive days because of this ruling. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed it. Now you can eat whenever you want after. Yeah, not.
Thank you.
Yes.
Why isn't Qadi Abbas a imam?
Why isn't Salman?
Well, Ibn Fadl al-Abbas is very special. He's very unique, and he's the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. But the imams are 12. Sorry.
Ismat al-Kubra and Azmat al-Sobra.
Yes, he's got Asmat al-Sobra, which means he didn't commit any sins. Of course, being the son of Amir al-Mu'mineen, and he possessed a lot of qualities. Imam Sadiq praises him in several traditions, and when you visit him, it's mustahab when you visit him, you recite the siyam, salamullahi wa salamu malaikatihi al-muqarrabeen, may God's praise and his angels' praises be upon you, O son of Amir al-Mu'mineen. But as for the imams, it's different. They were, chosen from before. كنت نبيا وآدم بين الماء والطين. This is a tradition that was narrated in both Sunni and Shia books. And was a prophet before Adam was even created. So these things were chosen from before. That we only have 12 imams. Imam Ali being the first, and then Imam Zaman being the last imam. We don't.
Any other questions? Hey, you mentioned that when we brought back, or be given an opportunity to come back to the job.
Yes.
Does everyone get that opportunity to come back, or only Mormons get that opportunity?
No, according to the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in one verse, وَحَرَامٌ عَلَىٰ قَرْيَةٍ أَهْلَكْنَاهَا أَنَّهُمْ لَا يَرْجِعُونَ. There are people that will not be brought back to this life. But other verses say that رَبَّنَا أَمَتَّنَا اثْنَتَيْنِ وَأَحْيَيْتَنَا اثْنَتَيْنِ. We died twice, we lived twice, which is referring to the raj'ah. So that won't be applied to everyone, but there are certain people that will be brought back to this life, yes. Especially the mu'mineen, the real mu'mins, that will be brought back to this life again. Because the verse is saying, وَنُرِيدُ أَن نَمُنَّ عَلَى الَّذِينَ اسْتُضْعَفُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ. We want those people that were oppressed, people that lived in this earth while being oppressed and persecuted, وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ أَئِمَّةً. They will be brought back, وَنَجْعَلَهُمْ الْوَارِثِينَ, and will be the heirs of the people, the predecessors.
Any other questions?
Will the people of other faiths will be rewarded for their good deeds?
The verse says, مَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ خَيْرًا يَرَهُ وَمَنْ يَعْمَلْ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ شَرًّا يَرَهُ. Everything good that you do, you'll reap the outcome. If it's bad, you'll reap the consequence. No matter who you are, if you're a Muslim, you're a Shia, doing something bad has consequences. Doing something good, you'll be rewarded for it. But the ultimate reward, which is on the day of judgment, which is the paradise, this will only be a place where the mu'mineen will dwell in. But as for the rewards, we have a tradition that says one day Musa happened to pass by a grave of someone who was a mu'min, but half of his corpse was out of the grave and half of it was inside. He was eaten by scavengers. And then he went inside the city and witnessed the king being buried in respect. And the king was a kafir. So he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what's happening? Why the king is a kafir? And look what's happening with respect, dignity, they're burying him. And this mu'min, he's half inside the grave and half out. And look what's happening to his body. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, because that mu'min had sins and he needed to be purified. And this is how we're purifying him. For the kafir, the king, he had some good deeds and we're rewarding him through the funeral procession, the dignified janazah and tashiyah of that king. So everyone will be rewarded, but not in paradise, and the mu'min will not be punished in hell. But rewards, yes, according to the verse.
I think you might want to ask a few more questions, so we'll have this as the last question. And it means that if you can make your questions concise. No, let's finish the question.
My question is regarding the Muslims. You mentioned so many different categories of mu'mineen, the good mu'mineen and the distant mu'mineen. And you said that the mu'mineen will be cleansed either in the present life or in the grave. So once the time period is over and people are brought back to Qiyamah, then presumably they'll all be clean and they'll be ready to go to paradise. Just want some sort of clarification on those three different terminologies, what the mu'min is really about.
Well, there are people that are considered to be mu'mineen in the general sense, that they believe in Allah and the Prophet, but they were sinners. We have a tradition that someone by the name of Sayyid Muhammad al-Hamiri, who was a poet of Ahlul Bayt alayhi salam, he wrote this poem about Imam Ali alayhi salam. Allah says in one section, if you memorize it, you'll go to paradise. It's a very nice poem. This man, upon his death, he was seen there was a dot on his face that grew, and then his face became black. But then there was a white dot that appeared on his face. It started to grow, and then his face became white, and then he died. And the man that witnessed this incident, he went to Imam Sadiq and he said, I witnessed something flabbergasting. Sayyid al-Hamiri, he was your companion, look what happened to him during that. Why did this happen? I mean, I'm in doubt now. The Imam said to him, because he used to drink alcohol, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had to punish him. Even if he's a companion of Imam Sadiq, he has to be punished before death. But there are mu'mineen in the general sense, with a tradition that some mu'mineen will dwell in hellfire for 300,000 years. So it's not after, rising from the dead, will be purified and cleansed and go straight to paradise. No, it depends on who you are, what you did, how much sins did you have. But the man comes to Imam Sadiq and says to him that if you're one of your companions or one of your followers has sins, what's going to happen? Allah said, in this life, he'll have to go through hardships. Allah will clean his a'mal. So the man said, what if he had more sins? He said, before death. He said, what if he had more sins? He said, during death. What if he had more sins? He said, in the grave. What if he had more sins? He said, in the qiyamah. What if he had more sins? He said, Allah will scare him with the fires of hell. He said, and then said, he'll go to paradise despite you not wanting this to happen, because he wasn't a follower of Imam Sadiq.
Thank you. Mr. Please, if you can become
Of course, you don't have to mention that. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Brother, you mentioned about Hazrat Abu Zar and Hazrat Salman. Obviously, there must be some reference, and perhaps you can give me later on. The other question about the daughter of Rasulullah as Ruqayya. As I know, I got the reference from Sunni books. Ruqayya was married to Usman at the time when he was not Muslim. He was kafir at that time. Does the Prophet can marry a daughter to a kafir? Anyway, that is the other one. The other one question is about you mentioned that after the death, the soul is taken away from the body very quickly. What kind of conscience Allah gives us in the Kaaba when the angel come and ask what the soul is not? Do we have different kind of consciousness to answer that? The other question is about the hadith. You mentioned about that it is in Sahih Bukhari. And reference, if possible, because I know the reference from Sahih Muslim and Muslim Ahmad, but not Bukhari. So I wonder if it is there and I can help perhaps. Thank you very much.
Inshallah. With regards to the reference, inshallah, I have to give
Okay,
it to you later. But it's in Sahih Bukhari. With regards to the soul, the traditions tell us that the soul is made of wind. It's a transparent material. And we can visualize, we can see things with our soul. In fact, the soul was confined in the body to limit its powers. The soul is very powerful. And the moment that the separation takes place, we'll be witnessing everything that takes place around us. We'll be hearing everything. A hadith says, and this was narrated in Sunni books, the Prophet, after the battle of Badr, he began to talk to Utbah, to Umayyah, to the mushrikeen that were killed. And then Umar said to him that, "O Prophet, can they hear you?" He said, "Innahum li'asma'a minkum." They can hear me more than you can hear me. And so we're conscious of everything that happens around us. But again, it's brought back into the body somehow. Maybe not, if you open the grave, you won't see that person, coming back to life. But there's a kind of consciousness that is, gained by the body, and then the questions and the interrogation takes place.
I mean, soul comes back.
Yes, the tradition says ila huqway, somehow, up to the belly. And with regards to Ruqayya and Zainab, we have as I said, we've got many traditions, we've got many historical accounts of the story, but our traditions say that Ruqayya and Zainab were the Prophet. Some of our traditions say that they were the daughters of the Prophet. Ibnati Ruqayya, the Prophet says. And this came after the revelation of the verse, وَدْعُوهُمْ لِآبَائِهِمْ. When you want to mention their names, don't say like Zayd ibn Muhammad, when Zayd wasn't the son of Muhammad. So if the Prophet says that Ruqayya, my daughter, after the revelation of this verse, that means that she really was the daughter of the Prophet. Again, this is debatable. We've got various traditions. But with regards to Uthman, he was a kafir back then. Again, we have to see when did she get married to Uthman.
I know that. Yes. Only my request was, when we are not sure about these things, we should not mention. Because a lot of eruption comes upon, people have different mind about that. So, which are debatable, but not mentioned in the
No, that's what I said. I said there are different views. Some people say that they were the daughters of Hala. Some people say that they were the daughters of Khadija. And there are traditions that say they were the daughter of Prophet. I told you all the views that...
Forgive me, I think this time is restricting. I think you've clarified your point by saying that this is a debate which should take place within the scholars. So I think if there are any further comments, I think you can all go for Sahiri. I can recommend a couple of restaurants. You can have a nice discussion there. Before we wrap up, yesterday's iftar was sponsored by me and Samia's family. Can I just request everyone to recite Surah Fatiha for Aziza Auntie's mother, Mumtaz Begum, and her grandfather, both paternal and maternal. Fatiha.
Also also the Mu'mineen are requested to recite Surah Al-Fatiha for Naseem Nas and Razia Begum and Rab Nawaz, Akhtar Bibi, Sharabaz Khan and Wariyat Bibi. This majlis was under the nisar of these marhumin. Please recite Surah Al-Fatiha after loud salawat.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Thank you.